Hello, my dear friend. This is a channel filled with tales straight from the future, and we have a large collection of stories for children in audio format. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new stories.
The CyberForest's Frozen Heart. Part 1. The Digital Forest and the Troubled Family. In the vast cyberforest, holographic trees stood tall and proud. They couldn't move or talk, but they were alive. They breathed. They grew. Even the oldest trees grew a little each year, just like little kids. In this amazing cyberforest lived a family. The dad, Zack, was a forest guardian. He had a beard made of shimmering black nanobots. His wife, Emma, worked from home as a virtual reality designer. They had two sons, Ethan, who was 12, and Leo, who was 7. Zack loved his job. He spent his days walking through the cyberforest, checking on the holographic trees and making sure everything was okay. He knew every tree by its digital signature. But at home, things weren't so great. Ethan and Leo fought all the time, like they were strangers instead of brothers. One day, on December 28th, Zack called his family together. He had bad news. "We can't have our New Year's hollow tree this year," he said. "Someone needs to go to Neon City to get the special decorations. But your mom can't go alone. It's too dangerous. I can't go with her because I don't know how to shop in the city. And we can't leave you two alone because you might hurt each other." Ethan and Leo looked at each other. They knew their fighting had caused this problem. But could they fix it? Zack sighed. He was happy in the cyberforest, but at home he felt sad and worried. How could he make his family happy again? Part 2, a promise made and tested. Ethan, being the smart kid he was, had an idea. He looked at his dad and said, "Dad, I promise I'll take good care of Leo. We won't fight. You and Mom can go to Neon City together." Zack thought about it. "Are you sure, Ethan? Can I trust you?" "I give you my word," Ethan said seriously. Zack nodded. "Okay, we'll be gone for 3 days. We'll come back on the 31st around 8 p.m. Until then, you're in charge. You're responsible for the house, and most importantly, for your brother. You need to be like a parent to Leo. Understand?" Ethan nodded, feeling proud and a little nervous. Emma got busy. She used the food replicator to prepare 3 days' worth of meals. She showed the boys how to heat them up. Zack loaded up the energy cells that powered their home. Then they called for a hover taxi. As the glowing taxi floated away, Ethan and Leo waved goodbye to their parents. The house felt very quiet. The first day went well, so did the second. The boys didn't fight at all, but on December 31st, things started to change. Ethan found an old-fashioned ebook called The Adventures of Sinbad the Space Explorer. He sat down to read it on his holopad. The story was so exciting. Sinbad was about to meet a giant space creature as big as a planet. But Leo was bored. He wandered around the house, sighing loudly. Finally, he went to Ethan and asked, "Can we play together, please?" Ethan looked up from his story. He saw his little brother's hopeful face, but he also saw the exciting story waiting for him on the holopad. What should he do? Part 3, a terrible choice. Ethan tried to ignore Leo, but his little brother kept asking to play. Finally, Ethan got angry. He grabbed Leo by the shoulders and pushed him towards the door. "Leave me alone," Ethan shouted. He opened the door, pushed Leo outside, and locked it. The house became quiet again. Ethan felt a little bad, but he thought, "I'll let him back in after I finish this chapter. It's not that cold outside." But the story was so exciting that Ethan forgot all about Leo. He read and read, lost in Sinbad's space adventures. When he finally looked up, the clock showed 7:45 p.m. Ethan jumped up, his heart racing. "Oh no, Leo," he cried. He ran outside, calling for his brother. But the cyberforest was dark and silent. There was no sign of Leo anywhere. Ethan searched and searched, but his little brother had vanished without a trace. Just then, Ethan heard the hum of the hover taxi. His parents were back. Panic filled him as the taxi landed and his parents stepped out. "Where's Leo?" Zack asked, looking around. Ethan burst into tears and told them everything. As he spoke, something strange happened. Zack's nanobot beard, which had always been shiny black, started to turn white. It was as if his sadness and shock were changing the very nanobots themselves. Emma gasped, her hand over her mouth. Zack's face became hard and stern. "Ethan," he said in a low, angry voice, "you broke your promise. You failed to protect your brother. Now you must leave. Don't come back until you find Leo." Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. But as he looked at his father's now completely white beard, he knew this was no joke. With a heavy heart, he turned and walked into the dark CyberForest, wondering how he would ever find his lost brother. Part 4, Into the Unknown CyberForest. Ethan walked deeper and deeper into the CyberForest. The familiar holographic trees soon gave way to strange, glowing plants he had never seen before. He called out for Leo again and again, but only his echo answered back. As he walked, Ethan passed through different sectors of the forest. Each sector was managed by a different forest guardian. At first, Ethan recognized the digital signatures of the guardians his dad worked with, but soon even these became unfamiliar. The further Ethan went, the more he thought about Leo. He remembered all the times they had fought and argued. Now those fights seemed so silly and pointless. "I'm sorry, Leo," Ethan whispered to the silent forest. "I'll be a better brother when I find you, I promise." Ethan walked and walked. It felt like he had been walking for days, but that was impossible, wasn't it? When the first light of dawn broke through the digital canopy, Ethan gasped in surprise. He was standing at the foot of enormous, glittering mountains. The peaks looked like they were made of crystal, reaching up into the pink morning sky. But this couldn't be right. Ethan knew these mountains were supposed to be weeks away from home. As he stood there, confused and amazed, Ethan heard a faint sound. It was like tiny bells ringing, coming from somewhere beyond the crystal mountains. "What is that?" Ethan wondered aloud. He knew he should keep looking for Leo, but something about that sound pulled at him. It was beautiful and eerie at the same time. After a moment's hesitation, Ethan decided to follow the sound. Maybe, just maybe, it would lead him to Leo. Taking a deep breath, he started climbing the crystal mountain towards the mysterious ringing. As he climbed, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he had stepped into a different world altogether. The cyberforest he knew was strange enough, but this was something else entirely. Part 5, The Frozen Data Forest. As Ethan crested the crystal mountain, he gasped. Before him stretched a forest unlike anything he'd ever seen. The trees were made of transparent data streams, shimmering and shifting like ice. When the digital wind blew, the trees swayed and chimed, creating the bell-like sound he'd been following. Suddenly, a tall figure appeared before Ethan. It looked like an old man, but his body was made of swirling snowflakes, and his eyes glowed with an icy blue light. "Welcome, young one," the figure said in a voice that sounded like crackling ice. "I am the CyberFrost, ruler of this digital winter realm." Ethan shivered, realizing for the first time how cold it was. The CyberFrost noticed and smiled, a chilling expression. "I've been keeping you warm, child. Otherwise, you'd have frozen long ago in my domain." The CyberFrost gestured, and a massive structure of ice and data appeared behind him. It was a palace, glittering with millions of ones and zeros frozen in its walls. "Come," the CyberFrost said, "let me show you my home." Inside, Ethan saw endless hallways, each marked with a glowing number. They passed through hall after hall until they reached number 25. Here, the CyberFrost stopped at a strange ice stove. Instead of normal fire, it burned with flickering black flames that seemed to absorb light rather than give it off. The CyberFrost turned to Ethan, his icy eyes gleaming. "You know, I've been watching you. I saw how you pushed your brother away wanting peace and quiet. I like that about you." Ethan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. I didn't mean to hurt him," he stammered. "Of course not," the CyberFrost said smoothly. "You just wanted to be left alone. I understand that desire very well. That's why I've decided to keep you here forever. Here, you'll have all the peace and quiet you could ever want." Ethan's eyes widened in horror. He suddenly realized the terrible consequences of his actions. His desire for solitude had not only hurt his brother, but had now trapped him in this frozen digital nightmare. "No," Ethan whispered. "I don't want this. I want to find my brother and go home." But the CyberFrost just smiled his cold smile, and Ethan knew he was in big trouble. The frozen task. The CyberFrost led Ethan to a corner of the 25th hall. There, huddled together, were small digital animals, cyber rabbits, data birds, and pixel squirrels. They shivered, their code flickering weakly. "Your task," the CyberFrost said, "is to freeze these creatures, hold them before the black flame until they turn to ice." Ethan was horrified. "I won't do it," he cried. The Cyberfrost's eyes flashed dangerously. Oh, but you will, unless you want your brother to remain frozen forever in the 49th hall. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Leo, he's here? Indeed, the Cyberfrost nodded. Locked away safely. His fate depends on your obedience. Torn between his conscience and his desire to save Leo, Ethan reluctantly began the grim task. He picked up a trembling cyber rabbit and held it before the black flame. As the creature slowly turned to ice, Ethan whispered, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Days passed, each one the same as the last. Ethan froze creature after creature, his heart growing heavier with each one. But all the while, his mind raced, trying to figure out how to rescue Leo. When the Cyberfrost wasn't watching, Ethan explored the palace. He searched for anything that might help him break into the 49th hall. Finally, in a forgotten corner, he found a data axe, its blade shimmering with sharp pixels. That night, Ethan snuck to the 49th hall. The door was made of ice oak, a material that looked like wood but was hard as diamond. Ethan swung the axe with all his might, again and again, but the door didn't even scratch. Exhausted and disheartened, Ethan returned to his task, the data axe hidden away for another attempt. As he worked, Ethan thought about his choices. He hated freezing the animals, but if it meant saving Leo, wasn't it worth it? But then, what about all these innocent creatures? The weight of his decisions pressed down on him, making each day harder than the last. Ethan knew he had to find another way. He had to save Leo, escape this icy prison, and somehow make things right. But how? As he pondered this, he continued his grim work, all the while watching and waiting for any opportunity to change his fate. Part spark of hope. One day, while exploring the palace, Ethan discovered an old data lighter hidden in a forgotten subroutine. An idea sparked in his mind. That night, when the Cyberfrost was away, Ethan carefully lit a small fire of warm orange data flames. With trembling hands, he picked up one of the frozen cyber rabbits and held it close to the flames. Slowly, the ice melted away and the rabbit's code began to flicker with life. Its tiny eyes blinked open, and it looked at Ethan with gratitude. Overjoyed, Ethan worked tirelessly each night, reviving as many creatures as he could. He built them small shelters in the shadowy corners of the hall, using bits of discarded data to create cozy hideaways. The revived animals became Ethan's friends. The data birds would perch on his shoulders, chirping encouragement. The pixel squirrels would bring him scraps of useful information they found. For the first time since arriving at the Ice Palace, Ethan didn't feel alone. But one evening, disaster struck. The Cyberfrost returned early and caught Ethan warming a frozen fox. The antagonist's eyes blazed with fury. You dare defy me, he roared, his icy breath extinguishing the warm data flames. Try this again and I'll freeze you solid, just like your brother. That night, Ethan lay awake, feeling hopeless. Suddenly, he felt a soft nudge. The cyber rabbit he'd first revived was at his side, its eyes gleaming with intelligence. It hopped towards the sleeping Cyberfrost and pointed with its tiny paw. Ethan's eyes widened as he saw a ring of ice keys hanging from the Cyberfrost's belt. He looked at the rabbit, hardly daring to hope. The creature nodded, and soon all of Ethan's animal friends were gathered around, ready to help. Moving as quietly as possible, Ethan crept towards the Cyberfrost. The data birds created a soft hum to mask any noise, while the pixel squirrels formed a lookout chain. With shaking hands, Ethan reached for the keys. Just as his fingers touched the icy ring, the Cyberfrost stirred. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. But the cyber rabbit quickly hopped onto the Cyberfrost's chest and began grooming itself, its soft movements lulling the antagonist back into deep sleep. Seizing the moment, Ethan snatched the keys and retreated to safety. As he clutched the icy keys, Ethan felt a surge of hope. He looked at his animal friends with tears in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Now let's go save my brother. Part 8, Race Against the Frost. With his heart pounding, Ethan crept towards the 49th hall, his animal friends close behind. The ice key felt heavy in his hand as he inserted it into the lock. With a soft click, the door swung open. Ethan gasped. In the center of the room stood Leo, but he wasn't the little brother Ethan remembered. Leo was completely frozen, a statue of ice and data. His eyes were open but unseeing, his outstretched hand reaching for help that never came. Leo, Ethan cried, rushing to his brother. I'm here. I'm so sorry. But Leo didn't respond. No matter how much Ethan pleaded, the frozen boy remained silent and still. Realizing time was short, Ethan carefully lifted his icy brother. "We have to get out of here," he told his animal friends. "Can you help us?" The creatures nodded, and together they began their escape. The data birds flew ahead, scouting the path. The pixel squirrels scampered alongside, ready to create distractions if needed. They had almost reached the palace entrance when a bone-chilling roar echoed through the halls. The cyberfrost had awakened. "Run!" Ethan yelled, clutching Leo tightly as he sprinted for the exit. They burst out of the palace into the frozen data forest, but the cyberfrost was right behind them. With each step the antagonist took, the air grew colder. Ethan felt his legs growing stiff, ice forming on his clothes. "You can't escape me," the cyberfrost bellowed, his icy breath getting closer. Just as Ethan thought all was lost, his animal friends sprang into action. The cyber rabbits darted between the cyberfrost's legs, tripping him up. The data birds flew in his face, disorienting him with their flickering wings. Meanwhile, the pixel squirrels and other small creatures surrounded Ethan and Leo, their warm data signatures creating a protective bubble of heat that kept the boys from freezing solid. "No," screamed the cyberfrost, struggling to his feet. "You belong to me. You'll stay here forever." But Ethan, cradling his frozen brother and surrounded by his loyal friends, kept running. The edge of the frozen data forest was just ahead. If they could reach it, maybe they could escape this digital winter wonderland. With the cyberfrost's howls of rage echoing behind them, Ethan and his unusual group raced towards freedom, hoping against hope that they could save Leo and find their way home. The thaw. As Ethan and his friends raced down the crystal mountain, something amazing happened. With each step, the frozen landscape around them began to change. The icy data streams melted into flowing rivers of information. The stark white snow pixels burst into colorful spring flowers. Ethan ran tirelessly, Leo's frozen form cradled in his arms. The animal friends kept pace, their warmth continuing to protect the brothers from the lingering cold. They passed through different sectors of the cyberforest, each one managed by a different forest guardian. Some areas Ethan recognized from long ago, others were completely new. But he didn't stop to wonder or ask for help. He just kept running, desperate to get Leo home. As they neared their house, Ethan's heart soared. They were almost there. But in his excitement, he didn't see the root of a data tree sticking out of the ground. His foot caught, and he stumbled. Time seemed to slow down as Leo slipped from Ethan's grasp. The frozen boy hit the ground and shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. "No," Ethan cried, falling to his knees. He tried to gather the pieces, but there were too many. Overwhelmed by despair, Ethan began to sob. He cried and cried until, exhausted, he fell into a deep sleep right there on the forest floor. While Ethan slept, something extraordinary happened. The animal friends gathered around Leo's shattered form. The cyber rabbits carefully pushed the largest pieces together. The pixel squirrels, with their tiny paws, fitted the smaller shards into place. The data birds used their beaks to lift the tiniest fragments. Slowly, piece by piece, they reassembled Leo. When the last shard was in place, the animals formed a circle around the still frozen boy. They shared their warmth, their life energy, their data essence with Leo. As the sun rose, its rays fell on Leo's face. The warmth of the sun, combined with the love of the animals and Ethan's unwavering devotion, began to work a miracle. Color returned to Leo's cheeks. His eyelids flickered. His chest began to rise and fall with breath. When Ethan woke up, he rubbed his eyes in disbelief. There was Leo, sitting up and looking around in wonder, very much alive and no longer frozen. The animal friends danced and chirped with joy around them. "Ethan," Leo said, his voice small and confused. "What happened? Where are we?" Tears of joy streaming down his face, Ethan hugged his brother tightly. "You're back, Leo," he whispered. "You're back, and I'm never letting you go again." Part 10, Home at Last. Hand in hand, Ethan and Leo walked the final stretch towards home, their animal friends following close behind. As they approached the house, they saw their parents standing outside, looking worried and tired. "Mom, Dad," the boys called out in unison. Zack and Emma turned, their eyes widening in disbelief. For a moment they stood frozen, then they ran towards their sons, arms outstretched. "Ethan, Leo," Emma cried, gathering both boys into a tight hug. Zack wrapped his arms around all of them, his white nanobot beard twinkling in the sunlight. As the family embraced, something remarkable happened. The white nanobots in Zack's beard began to shift and change. Slowly at first, then faster, the beard returned to its original shimmering black color. It was as if the joy of reunion was reprogramming the very essence of the nanobots. Emma gasped, touching Zack's beard in wonder. "It's black again," she whispered. Zack smiled, tears in his eyes. "Our family is whole again," he said. "That's all that matters." The boys introduced their parents to their animal friends, explaining the incredible journey they had been through. Zack and Emma listened in amazement, grateful for the creatures that had helped bring their sons home. In the days that followed, life in the family changed. Ethan and Leo still had their disagreements, but they handled them differently now. When Ethan needed some quiet time, he would say to Leo, "Can I have a little time alone, please? Just for a little while. Then we can play together." And Leo, understanding now how important it was to respect others' needs, would nod and find something else to do for a while. The brothers spent more time together too. They would explore the CyberForest, always making sure to stay close to home. Sometimes their animal friends would visit, reminding them of their incredible adventure and the power of kindness and cooperation. As for Zack, his nanobot beard never turned white again. It remained a healthy, shimmering black, a constant reminder of the love and harmony that now filled their home. Ethan often thought back to his time in the Ice Palace. He had learned valuable lessons about responsibility, the consequences of his actions, and the importance of considering others' feelings. Most of all, he had learned the true meaning of brotherhood. And so, in their cozy home in the cyberforest, the family lived happily, their bond stronger than ever before. The echoes of their laughter could be heard among the holographic trees, a joyful sound in the ever-changing digital world around them.
Until next time, my dear friend, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new stories.